Hello everyone, and welcome to our comprehensive journey through the rich and vibrant history of Florida. Known today for its beaches, tourism, and space exploration, Florida has a fascinating past that stretches back thousands of years, shaped by indigenous cultures, European explorers, and major events that have left a lasting impact on the United States. Through this detailed exploration, we will walk through the pivotal moments that transformed Florida into the dynamic and diverse state we know today. Let's begin our journey into Florida's past, divided into 10 key sections that reveal the state's evolution over time. 1. Pre-colonial Florida. The indigenous peoples. Long before European explorers arrived, Florida was home to thriving indigenous civilizations. The earliest known inhabitants, the Paleo-Indians, arrived around 12,000 years ago during the last ice age. Over millennia, as the climate warmed and sea levels rose, these early peoples adapted, developing distinct cultures that flourished in Florida's diverse environments. Prominent among them were the Calusa, Timucua, and Apalachee tribes. The Calusa, often referred to as the Shell People, dominated the southwest coast of Florida. They created advanced societies that utilized the abundant marine resources, building intricate canal systems and massive shell mounds. The Timucua, living in the northeastern part of the state, were known for their large villages and sophisticated agricultural practices, while the Apalachee, based in the northwest, built complex societies with advanced farming techniques, particularly cultivating maize. These tribes developed trade networks that spanned across North America, exchanging goods like shells, fish, and ceramics. Spirituality was central to these indigenous cultures. The Calusa believed their leaders had divine power, and their society was organized around elaborate rituals, including the construction of ceremonial mounds. These mounds, some still visible today, were places of worship and community gatherings. The Timucua and Apalachee also had rich religious traditions, with ceremonial dances, feasts, and respect for nature as integral aspects of their daily lives. 2. European exploration. The arrival of the Spanish. Florida's first significant encounter with Europeans came in 1513 when Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de León arrived on its shores. Searching for the legendary Fountain of Youth, he named the land, La Florida, meaning, land of flowers, in honor of the Easter season, Pascua Florida. Although Ponce de León's quest for eternal youth was unsuccessful, his voyage marked the beginning of centuries of European exploration and colonization in Florida. Spain's interest in Florida grew, and in 1565, the Spanish established St. Augustine, the oldest continuously inhabited European settlement in the United States. St. Augustine was not just a military outpost but also a mission center aimed at converting indigenous peoples to Christianity. However, the Spanish faced numerous challenges, including attacks from indigenous tribes and rival European powers. The French had briefly established Fort Caroline in 1564 near present-day Jacksonville, but they were swiftly ousted by the Spanish, who saw the French presence as a threat to their dominance in the region. Spain's control of Florida ebbed and flowed due to conflicts with other European powers and the challenges of maintaining a far-flung colonial empire. Nevertheless, St. Augustine remained a critical foothold for Spain in North America, serving as a vital port and defensive point against both the French and the British. Its famous Castillo de San Marcos, built in the late 1600s, still stands today as a symbol of Spain's lasting influence in Florida. 3. Colonial Florida, fortification and conflict. The 17th and 18th centuries were marked by intense competition among European powers for control of Florida. Spain, France, and later Britain vied for dominance in the region. Florida's strategic position at the entrance to the Gulf of Mexico made it a valuable prize, but the region was also difficult to control due to its vast swamps, tropical climate, and resistance from indigenous tribes. Spain's primary strategy was fortification. Castillo de San Marcos, completed in 1695, was a fortress designed to protect Spanish Florida from European rivals and pirates. The fort withstood multiple attacks and is one of the best preserved examples of Spanish colonial military architecture in the United States today. However, the Spanish struggled to maintain control over the vast and unruly colony. Their reliance on Native American alliances was a double-edged sword, as tribal dynamics often led to shifting allegiances. Florida also became a destination for African slaves escaping from British-controlled colonies to the north. Spain offered freedom to escaped slaves if they converted to Catholicism and served in the Spanish militia. This led to the establishment of Gracia Real de Santa Teresa de Mos in 1738, the first free African settlement in what would become the United States. This unique blend of indigenous, European, and African cultures contributed to Florida's multicultural heritage. 4. British rule and the Revolutionary Era. In 1763, as part of the Treaty of Paris that ended the 7 Years' War, Spain ceded Florida to Britain in exchange for Havana, Cuba, which had been captured by the British. The British divided Florida into two colonies, East Florida, with its capital at St. Augustine, and West Florida, with its capital at Pensacola. Under British rule, Florida experienced a brief period of economic growth. Plantations were established, and the British government encouraged settlers from other colonies, particularly Loyalists fleeing the turmoil of the American Revolution. Florida remained loyal to Britain during the American Revolution, serving as a haven for Loyalists and a launching point for British raids against the Southern American colonies. However, British control of Florida was short-lived. In 1783, following the American victory in the Revolutionary War, Florida was returned to Spain under the terms of the Second Treaty of Paris. 5. The U.S. acquires Florida. By the early 19th century, Florida had become a site of frequent conflict between American settlers and the Seminole tribes. The United States was also eager to expand its territory and saw Spanish-controlled Florida as a key acquisition. Tensions culminated in the First Seminole War, 1817 to 1818. In which American forces, led by Andrew Jackson, invaded Florida under the pretext of punishing the Seminoles for harboring runaway slaves and launching raids into Georgia. In the aftermath of the war, Spain, weakened and unable to defend its distant colony, agreed to cede Florida to the United States under the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819. Florida officially became a U.S. territory in 1821. American settlers began to pour into the region, leading to further clashes with the Seminoles, particularly over land. This tension sparked the Second Seminole War, 1835 to 1842, one of the longest and costliest conflicts between Native Americans and the U.S. government. Despite fierce resistance from leaders like Osceola, many Seminoles were eventually forced to relocate to Indian Territory, present-day Oklahoma, though a small number remained in the Florida Everglades, where their descendants live today. 6. Statehood and the Civil War. Florida was admitted to the Union as the 27th state on March 3, 1845. It entered as a slave state, and its economy was heavily reliant on agriculture, particularly cotton and cattle. Florida's geographic isolation limited its population, but the institution of slavery was deeply entrenched, with enslaved African Americans making up a significant portion of the population by the mid-19th century. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Florida was one of the first states to secede from the Union and join the Confederacy. While Florida did not see large-scale battles like other Southern states, it played a crucial role in supplying Confederate troops with food, cattle, and salt. Florida's most significant Civil War battle was the Battle of Olustee in 1864, a Confederate victory that helped maintain the state's control of its critical resources. In the aftermath of the war, Florida, like much of the South, faced the difficult process of Reconstruction. The state struggled to rebuild its economy, integrate freed African Americans into society, and recover from the devastation of the war. Federal troops occupied Florida until 1877, when Reconstruction officially ended. 7. The Gilded Age, Development and Expansion. The late 19th century saw Florida transform from a sparsely populated frontier into a booming state. Entrepreneurs like Henry Flagler and Henry Plant played pivotal roles in this transformation. Flagler, a co-founder of Standard Oil, was instrumental in developing Florida's East Coast by extending his Florida East Coast Railway down the Atlantic coastline. His efforts turned once remote areas like Palm Beach and Miami into bustling hubs for tourism and agriculture. Plant focused on developing the Gulf Coast, particularly around Tampa, connecting the region by rail and spurring economic growth. During this period, Florida's natural beauty, warm climate, and coastal access began to attract northern tourists, particularly wealthy industrialists and business tycoons looking for winter getaways. As a result, Florida's tourism industry began to take shape, laying the foundation for what would become one of the state's most important economic sectors. 8. Seminole Wars and Native American Resistance. The Seminole Wars, which spanned from the early 19th century into the late 1850s, had a profound impact on the state. While the Second Seminole War was the largest and most destructive, the Third Seminole War, 1855 to 1858, marked the end of significant resistance by the Seminoles. Despite this, a small group of Seminoles never surrendered and remained in the remote Everglades, resisting efforts by the U.S. government to remove them. Today, the Seminole tribe of Florida is recognized as a sovereign nation and plays an important role in the state's cultural and economic life. Their resilience in the face of displacement and assimilation efforts is a testament to their strength and cultural endurance. 9. The 20th century, boom and bust. Florida's growth accelerated rapidly in the 20th century, spurred by waves of migration, technological advancements, and economic shifts. The Florida land boom of the 1920s saw a frenzy of real estate speculation, attracting developers and investors from across the nation. Cities like Miami and Orlando expanded quickly as people flocked to the state for its warm climate and economic opportunities. However, the speculative bubble burst in the mid-1920s, leading to an economic collapse that was compounded by the Great Depression of the 1930s. Florida, like the rest of the nation, struggled during these years, but recovery began in the 1940s with the outbreak of World War II. Florida's strategic location made it an ideal site for military bases, training camps, and naval operations. Cities like Jacksonville and Pensacola became important military hubs, and the influx of military personnel and government investment helped revitalize the state's economy. 10. Space Age and Modern Florida. The mid-20th century saw Florida play a central role in one of the most significant events in human history, space exploration. In 1961, the United States established Cape Canaveral, later known as the Kennedy Space Center, as the primary launch site for NASA's missions to space. The space race reached its climax with the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969, which was launched from Cape Canaveral, firmly placing Florida at the forefront of space exploration. Florida's economy also diversified during this time, with tourism, agriculture, and real estate all playing major roles. The opening of Walt Disney World in 1971 transformed Central Florida into a global destination for family entertainment, while the state's agricultural industry, particularly citrus farming, continued to thrive. By the end of the 20th century, Florida had become one of the fastest-growing states in the U.S., known for its unique blend of cultures, industries, and opportunities. Conclusion: Florida's history is a complex tapestry of indigenous cultures, European conquests, wars, and modern development. From the ancient Calusa and Timucua to the cutting-edge space exploration of the 20th century, Florida's story is one of resilience, adaptation, and transformation. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the fascinating history of the Sunshine State.